As we observe the 18-day campaign to end violence against women or VAW from November 25th to December 12th, we ask you, Lord, to look with kindness upon all of us who are gathered here. Fill our hearts and minds with love, wisdom, and courage as we face our daily lives. From domestic violence, rape, incest, sexual harassment, trafficking, prostitution, and other forms of violence. May they have the courage to break their silence, find protection, healing, and justice. We pray for the perpetrators of VAW that they may learn to respect women and girls and stop the violence. O loving Father and Mother, send us your Spirit so that everything that we do will be done with love and respect for our fellow humans. Regardless of age, sex, class, ethnicity, and ability, O powerful God, develop in us a high regard for the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of everyone, and bestow on us the capacity to promote, protect, and fulfill the rights of women. Grant us the strength to stand up against all forms of violence happening to women and girls, the sharpness to recognize a silenced victim of VAW, the courage to speak up against VAW. Resolve any form of VAW, protect for all of this, we implore your guidance. Amen. Later, grant us the strength to stand up against all forms of violence happening to women and girls, the sharpness to recognize a silenced victim of VAW, the courage to speak up against VAW. As we observe the 18-day campaign to end violence against any form of VAW, protect all.
We will proceed with the singing of the Pambansang Awit.
Noon pa man, malaki na ang naging bahagi ng mga kababaihan sa lipunang Pilipino. Kaisa sila sa marubdob na paghahangad ng kalayaan ng ating lahi. Kabilang sila sa paglinang ng ating makulay na sining at mayamang kultura. Kasapi sila sa pagtataguyod ng mga adhikain ng kapwa mamamayan at sa pagtugon sa mga pangangailangan ng lipunan. Katuwang sila sa pagtuklas sa mga larangan ng agham at medisina. Kapanalig sila sa pagpapairal ng batas, karapatan at katarungan para sa lahat. Kabahagi sila sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sa pagpapanatili ng demokrasyang Pilipino. Sa paglipas ng panahon, hindi nagmaliw ang kanilang pag-ibig sa ating inang bayan. Mga kababayan, ito ang alay ng mga kababaihang Pilipino para Noon pa man, malaki na ang naging bahagi ng mga kababaihan sa lipunang Pilipino. Kaisa sila sa marubdob na paghahangad ng kalayaan ng ating lahi. Kabilang sila sa paglinang ng ating makulay na sining at mayamang kultura. Kasapi sila sa pagtataguyod ng mga talikain ng kapwa mamamayan at sa pagtugon sa mga pangangailangan ng lipunan. Katuwang sila sa pagtuklas sa mga larangan ng arahan at medisina. Kamaaling sila sa pagpapagalang ng batas ng karapatan at katarungan para sa lahat. Bahagi sila sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sa pagpapanatili ng demokrasya. Pinakakapwa sa paglipas ng pagpapagiging sa ang pinakakapwa sa ating pinatukas nila sa pagpapagawa. Ito ang alay mga kababaihan na sila para sa Diyos. Tumayo at sabay-sabay nating aralin ang pagbansang
In today's world of massive evolution in knowledge and information technology, the role of teachers is dramatically transformed. From the typical classroom show and tell, to teacher-fronted lectures, to student homework, education extends into the home and the community, and even around the world. As learning is no longer confined in textbooks, the contexts for learning have changed, providing challenges to the teaching technology. The role of teachers is dramatically transformed. This confluence of events and factors within the country and the world has transformed the landscape of Philippine education and the community, dramatically reshaping the curricula and educational thrusts at all levels, from basic to higher education, including technical and vocational domains. Thus, the Philippine Normal University, the country's National Center for Teacher Education, or NCTE, has shifted gears towards an active leadership as a specialized university for research in teacher education, guided by the institution's philosophy of education for personal and social transformation. PNU pursues a more responsive, relevant, innovative, and empowering teacher education curriculum, both for the graduate and undergraduate programs. Amidst the high-speed breakthroughs in information and communication technology, PNU positions itself as a catalyst of change to optimize potentials of the country's teaching force, to increase access to, promote equity in, and improve the quality of education, using alternative modalities for teaching and learning. As NCTE, the task of PNU is enormous, but it is a responsibility which the institution takes to heart and one which it has prepared for. The university's 4 regional campuses now operate as specialized hubs to respond to the opportunities and prospects of its local communities. PNU North Luzon, the Indigenous People Education Hub, offers a customized curriculum suitable for IP knowledge and identity. PNU South Luzon, the Technology and Livelihood Education Hub, is dedicated to producing teachers for the different specializations in TLE. PNU Visayas, the Environment and Green Technology Education Hub, provides training on renewable energy, waste management, and other environment-related concerns. PNU Mindanao, the Multicultural Education Hub, promotes varying cultures based on ethnicity and identity. PNU serves as the lead shepherd in significant networks and organizations such as the Association of Southeast Asian Teacher Education Network, the Philippine Teacher Education Network, the National Network of Normal Schools, and the Philippine Higher Education Research Consortium. PNU also takes an active role in educational consortium in the Asia-Pacific region. Among them, the Consortium of Asia-Pacific Education Universities, the Asian University Presidents Forum, the Association of Southeast Asian Institutions of Higher Learning, and the Association of Universities in the Asia and the Pacific. PNU leads by example in the hope that through collaboration, teacher education can make a mark for relevance and leadership in the global context. In its 116 years of existence, the Philippine Normal University believes that it has created a niche in building the nation. Now it faces the challenges of the unfolding future. We are confident that our unified goal for teacher education will help us fulfill our vision for the future. We are PNU. We nurture innovative teachers.
Philippine Normal University, South Luzon Campus, formerly known as PNU Quezon Campus in Lopez, Quezon, originally started in a consortium program in teacher education together with the Polytechnic University of the Philippines in 1980. After almost 13 years of educational partnership, the consortium agreement expired. In 1993, the operation of the PNU teacher education continued in Lopez, Quezon through a memorandum of agreement penned by the leadership of PNU with the provincial and local government of Quezon and the Department of Education, Culture and Sports. Hence, the campus stayed in the compound of Lopez National Comprehensive High School from 1993 to 1996. In a span of 6 years, the campus had eventually acquired its own 1-hectare site through the donation from the provincial government. In 1999, the campus transferred to its own site where a 2-story building has been constructed. Welcome to our home. Addressing this aspect about the learning environment improves the quality of education and learning effectiveness. Philippine Normal University South Luzon Campus secures an environment which is conducive to the learning of each of its students. The best schools encourage quality education for all. PNUSL is determined to maximize its available resources in order to give the students the best so that they can become educators of the future. Philippine Normal University South Luzon Campus has started to produce top-notchers in the licensure examination for teachers since 2003. PNUSL also offers a top-notch let review program and bridging program. Faculty members manifest academic competence in knowledge production, sharing, and management. Alongside rigid academic training, PNUSL also gives an equal attention in forming the values, skills, attitude, and knowledge of the 21st century learners and teachers.
This juncture, ladies and gentlemen, let us now hear the statement of the purpose from the head of the Gender and Development, Professor Brenda V. Villamore.
Thank you, Martina. To our invited speaker, who will be properly introduced later, our University President, Dr. Bert J. Tuga, our Vice President for Academics, Dr. Jenny V. Hoxon, the Director for University Center for Gender and Development, Dr. Minda C. Valencia, to the Executive Director and Provost of PNU South Luzon, Dr. Ruel V. Avila, to the Dean for Academics and TLE, Dr. Rodrigo D. Abines, to the Director for Finance and Administration, Professor Reynald M. Cacho, the Director for Office and Student Services, Dr. Amor F. Lunisa, the Lady Educators Club members headed by Ms. Joy Tricia Corpus, who are working together with the Office of Gender and Development for the activities in the 18-day campaign. Dear students, a pleasant morning to all. The 18-day campaign to end violence against women is being observed every November 25 to December 12 every year. Historically, we take a look at how society treated women. Women during the ancient times were treated as second-class citizens. We are aware of patriarchal societies wherein women were prohibited from holding positions in the society, whereas women experienced double standards, such as women were stoned or put into fire when they were caught with the sin of adultery, while men, when caught with the same sin, don't receive the same punishment. In the modern world, women still face many forms of discrimination. To name a few, in the 2015 UN report, 133 million girls and women have experienced female genital mutilation in the 29 countries of Africa and the Middle East. This is practiced for no medical reasons at all. Additionally, girls under 5 years old have a high mortality rate in South and East Asia and the Pacific due to discriminatory practices related to son preference. In South Sudan, a country faced with war, almost 3/4 of the girls are not given the chance to go to primary school. In the Philippines, an obvious form of discrimination is rejection of women in hiring purposes due to maternity benefits. Women are also very vulnerable to any forms of violence. Allow me to mention some data from PCW, or Philippine Commission on Women. From 2004 to 2016, there are a total of 158,353 reported cases of violence against women in the country. One in 16 women have experienced sexual violence in the country. From Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, in 2017, 1 in 5 women have experienced physical violence since age 15. With these different types of violence, 38% never reported or sought assistance from authorities. Now, we are experiencing COVID pandemic. Since March 17 of this year, we were ordered to stay at home. Issues of gender-based violence is on the rise. We are on the 8th month of the pandemic, and we're facing more issues than pre-pandemic. There is an increase of domestic, sexual, and other forms of gender-based violence during the crisis, according to World Economic Forum of 2020. The Philippine National Police, or PNP, also reported that an average of 8 persons a day have become victims of sexual assault during the community quarantine, according to the news in Philippine Star in 2020. So as a PNU South Luzon family, we are gathered today to show our support for the campaign to end such kinds of violence. Maybe some of you here have experienced being violated by someone. It can be by a family member, a friend, a relative, or anybody. I want to tell you that you are not alone in your journey. We are family here at PNU South Luzon. We help one another to heal emotionally and psychologically. In these crucial times, we need one another to surpass the challenges of the crisis. Students who need some help can reach out to the Lady Educators Club and the Office of the Gender Development so we can be of help to you. I hope that this program that we'll be having this morning will be a sort of very help to every one of us as we will rally behind and campaign to end violence against women and children. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Brenda. And this time, let us now hear a message from the president of the Lady Educators Club. Let us all welcome Ms. Joy Tricia May Corpus.
Kahel na naman ang kulay ng langit. Hudyat ng 18 araw na pakikibakat patuloy na pagmumulat sa mga pikit, na hindi natitigatig sa mga braso't labing mapaniil at malupit. Boses mo ngayo'y pinalalakas at hinihimok na pilit. Sa gayo'y mga barbaro ang siyang mahumyat manliit, hindi man tuluyang malupig. Nawa sa pamamagitan ng ganitong mga pakikibaka, ito'y mabawas at unti-unti na nating madaig. Mapagpalayang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Joy Tricia May P. Corpus, and VAW Free Community Starts with me. Naway maging bahagi tayo ng pagbabago sa ating mga bayan at komunidad. Maraming salamat. Boses mo ngayo'y pinalalakas at hinihimok na pilit.
To our vice presidents, campus executive directors and provosts, other university and campus officials, Dr. Minda Valencia, Director of the University Center for Gender and Development, faculty members, admin staff, students, good morning. Welcome to the 18-day campaign to end violence against women. At this day and age, violence against women, or VAW, is still one of the country's persistent social issues. It is a blatant disregard for women's rights and fundamental freedoms. Although it's deeply rooted in our culture to honor and respect women, VAW still exists today. At PNU, the observance of this campaign is not merely in compliance with Proclamation number 1172 series of 2006. It is also our advocacy. This becomes much more relevant as we are currently trying to overcome the effects of the global pandemic caused by COVID-19, when people are forced to stay home and such issues persist in light of the community quarantine imposed in the country. We hope to continually raise awareness among the members of the PNU community such that we help prevent or totally eradicate violence against women in all forms. To the women and girls out there, empower yourselves. You have rights that are protected by law. Know that the university is a safe place for you, and if you experience any untoward incidents, which I pray will not, let us know. Dr. Minda Valencia and the UCGD will be there to assist you. To the men and boys, continue to honor and respect our women. These are your mothers, grandmothers, sisters, cousins, friends, and partners. Protect them from harm and from any violation of their human rights. Celebrate their achievements. To PNU, let us continue to conduct trainings and workshops to further increase awareness of human rights in general. We already have great efforts in incorporating gender in our curriculum. Please do know that we have a committee on decorum and investigation in place where students, faculty members, and admin staff can seek help. The UCGD is open for all of you to serve you and your needs. The management is committed to providing a safe place for everyone, especially to our women and girls. Good morning once again to everyone, and I wish you all a productive activity. Mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Magandang araw po. Isang pagpupugay sa patuloy na pagtangkilik sa lahat ng gawain ng University Center for Gender and Development. Marami pong salamat. Ang muli nating pagsasama-sama upang ilunsad ang Proclamation 1172, Series of 2006 o ang 18-day campaign to end violence against women ay isang patunay na sa pamantasang normal ng Pilipinas ay buo at walang alinlangan nating itinataguyod ang pagkilala sa kahalagahan ng pagiging ligtas ng ating lipunan, ng ating syudad at ng lahat ng ating sinasakupan sa anumang gawaing makakasakit sa ating mga kababaihan. Bilang National Center for Teacher Education, higit na pinahahalagahan ng PNU ang bagay na ito. Bilang tagapagtaguyod ng mga magiging guro, dakila para sa PNU ang patuloy na paggabay at pagpupunyagi sa mga kababaihan. pinipilit nating ilagay sa ating curriculum, sa ating mga gawain, na ang ating mga mag-aaral ay maging mahusay na mga guro sa kanilang mga magiging mag-aaral upang pilitin na maging ligtas ang mga kababaihan sa kanilang ginagalawang lugar. Tunay nga pong dakila ang anumang gawain na para sa ating mga kapwa, sa aking kapwa babae at sa ating kalahatan ng mga kababaihan sa Pilipinas. Asahan po ninyo na buhay ang pagpapalawig sa pagkilala sa karapatan, katangian at pag-unlad ng mga kababaihan sa loob at labas ng PNU. Katulong niyo po kami sa patuloy na pagkilala sa kahalagahan na ito'y lagi nating gawain para maging ligtas ang ating lipunan. Labanan natin ang mapamuksang karahasan sa mga kababaihan at sa lahat na rin. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you so much to the president of the Lady Educators Club, Ms. Joy Tricia May Corpus, to the president of Philippine Normal University, Dr. Bert J. Tuga, and to the vice president for academics of PNU, Dr. Jenny V. Hoxon. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, let us now hear another message coming from the executive director and provost of Philippine Normal University, South Luzon, Dr. Well V. Avila.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Si
Martin.
Martina.
As
Talaga.
Lady Educators
DJ na DJ ay.
led by Ms. Joy Tricia May P. Corpus,
DJ.
to Professor Brenda B. Moore, the head of Gender Development Office, to the PNU system officials, President Dr. Bert J. Tuga, Vice President for Academics Dr. Jenny B. Hoxon, the Director for University Center for Gender and Development, Dr. Minda C. Valencia. To our speaker, Attorney Francis May D. Segui, to the members of the Lady Educators Club, members of the Young Mentors Circle, to the Executive Committee, to the faculty and the personnel of PNU South Luzon, to the guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good day. The anti-VAW law brought some significant changes in the campus. I witnessed how some students struggled to please certain professors. Those students were afraid to approach the mentors, and so they could hardly communicate the difficulties they had, all the difficulties and problems they had experienced. I heard those mentors implying that students and teachers are not of the same level, and mentors should be library ahead of their students. This kind of thinking became the source of verbal abuse and unfair treatment. They were not permitted to share the table with their mentors, and in order to discipline the entire class, the mentor used to verbally abuse one inattentive student. Asunchu-like discipline that half of the entire period was spent in reprimanding even the unerring students. Pregnant students were encouraged to stop schooling in the pretext of caring for the health of the conceiving students, but with the ulterior motive of shutting the portal of the university to those students who were guilty of premarital relationship. That was the clear exemplification of Freire's famous banking-like system of education, where in his own words, the teacher talks about reality as if it were motionless, static, compartmentalized, and predictable. Or else he expounds on a topic completely alien to the existential experience of the students. education thus becomes an act of depositing. I have to say that I used to be the weeping kid of some senior faculty, perhaps because they were my college mentors. It seemed that in their treatment of me, I had no chance to grow and mature. What was left in their mind was that I was the same college boy who were subservient to their whims, so to speak. Being a victim of psychological violence, I developed the thinking to do the same to my junior faculty. Thanks to the presence of some colleagues whose instinct conformed to the anti-VAW provisions. With a series of GAD and anti-VAW conventions and seminars, as these had been propelled by the allotted 5% budget, this psychological violence subsided. Mentors had shifted from their martinet stance to a more accommodating one, thus beginning to understand the struggles of college students and their colleagues. No mentor has the complete knowledge of each student's experiences on domestic violence and societal violence. Students have to receive comforting words from their schoolmates and teachers, but if those students who were not resilient to domestic violence meet psychological violence even at school, how tragic their lives would be. Students examined the associations between violence, researchers examined the associations between violence and mental health, musculoskeletal pain, and early disability pension. The prevalence and consequences of good versus poor adjustment, resilience versus vulnerability following encounters with violence were also examined. These researches revealed that men suffered more violent events during childhood than women did, and vice versa during adulthood. The recommendations include our participation for us to have active roles in the prevention of violence, that universal prevention is generally the best strategy. That is, finding socio-political interventions that target the root causes of violence in order to prevent its occurrence. PNU South Luzon supports this 18-day campaign to end violence against women and children with Professor Brenda Villamor at the helm of the Godship. Faculty and personnel are one in stating categorically that violence has no room in the campus. It does not have even room in the classroom. Let us push for the VAW Free Community by starting with ourselves. Good morning to all. Mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Welby Avila. And at this juncture, let us now, and to introduce to us our speaker for today, let us all welcome Ms. Elame B. Septimo.
I am pleased to introduce our... Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am pleased to introduce our guest speaker for today's webinar entitled Gender-Based Violence in the Time of COVID-19 Pandemic. Our guest speaker is currently holding a position of Attorney 3 of Investigation and Enforcement Division, Legal and Legislative Service at Commission on Higher Education or CHED. Prior to this, she worked as an assistant professor at Trinity University of Asia from 2004 to 2017. She took her bachelor's and master's degree in philosophy at University of the Philippines, Diliman from 2000 to 2009 and obtained her Juris Doctor degree at San Sebastian College, Recolectos, Manila in 2017. Moreover, our guest speaker has presented papers entitled Bioethical Challenges and Responses to the New Global Economy during the 16th Asian Bioethics Conference in 2015 and Decentralization and Democracy and Pursuit of the Development Agenda, Academe, Practitioners, and civil society as champions during the international conference of the same year. Now, let us welcome our guest speaker to share her knowledge and expertise for our today's webinar, Attorney Francis May de la Cruz-Segui.
Good morning. Good morning to all participants. Dr. Bert Tuga, thank you for the message. President of PNU, Dr. Jenny Hoxon, the VP for Academics, and Dr. Minda Valencia, Head of the Center of Gender and Development in PNU. Dr. Bert Tuga, Executive Director and Provost of PNUSL, and Ms. Brenda Villamor, Head of Gender and Development Office, and Ms. Joy Tricia May Corpus, the President of the Lady Educators Club. And to all students, officials, officers, members of the PNUSL community as well as the PNU community. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
So I was tasked by the GAD office to discuss about violence, gender-based violence. At first, I was thinking if such topic would include not only women, but also other marginalized gender who are also target of gender-based violence. Sorry. So I'm looking for my presentation. Mhm. Naku. So I will just continue while looking for my presentation. Wait. So this 18-day campaign is to end violence against women, or I would say maybe we could include other genders as well, is a very fruitful or productive way of battling or fighting against gender-based violence in the Philippines. And based on my research, I saw that the Philippine Commission on Women reported that these campaigns are not in vain. Rather, these campaigns are really effective in reducing the number of cases, reported cases of gender-based violence in our country. However, PCW was also amenable that there could be unreported cases of gender violence which are not counted in our statistics, especially now in our current situation, which is the prevalence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the reporting of cases are already limited by the restrictions given to us by the government. Where is it? Stop share. Mhm. And there is. Mhm. Ayan. So I found it. Ayan. Sorry. Okay. Ayan. So I think this is one of the limitations of virtual. Well, during the face-to-face events, there are also technical glitches like this. However, we could experience it more now since we are using the platform. So as I was mentioning that the number of cases of violence, gender-based violence, has already decreased based on PCW's report, um, which signifies that campaigns like this, what we're doing right now, is actually effective. So we should not stop doing this. Instead, even if we feel that gender-based violence is still existing, or it hasn't stopped yet, still we have to continue fighting against it, so that maybe later on such such violence will end. Um, Although, well, the cycle of violence, as they say, continue, since that cycle of violence is not merely social or cultural. Rather, it is already part of the psyche of the victims or the offenders. There were studies which said that the offenders, usually the children, those who could see how these offenders commit gender-based violence, they would actually these children would actually inherit, or they would be able to inculcate it in their minds that, oh, this kind of act is normal, so maybe later on when I grow up, I would also do the same. So the offender and victim cycle continues simply because um, the learning or the teachings inside the family home is actually more influential than those which they get out of their family homes. So that's why kahit ang dami-dami na pong ginagawa to prevent it, if we cannot prevent it inside the home, it's very difficult to really eradicate this kind of violence. So my presentation will have this flow. So first, I will discuss gender-based violence in general, and then followed by the laws on gender-based violence, case laws on anti-VAW, gender-based violence in the presence of COVID-19 pandemic. So again, as I've said earlier, I looked for a definition of gender-based violence, which encompasses all genders, including the LGBTQI community. But so far, when we talk of gender-based violence, it's still gender specific, which is for women and girls, okay, or women and children. So when you say gender-based violence, it is composed of physical, sexual, psychological, and economic harm. So before, economic harm or economic abuse is not part of the definition of gender-based violence. It is just merely physical, sexual, and psychological. However, through time, the economic abuse concept was inserted simply because most of the time, women or wife specifically, they would end up um, as victims. They would end up as victims without surpassing such kind of condition simply because of economic reasons. For instance, if they would report such abuse committed by their husbands or their partners, how would they sustain their lives without the husband or the partner? So that's why economic abuse is inserted here as part of a gender-based violence act. So these physical, sexual, psychological, economic abuses include threats, coercion, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, and it is not merely in a private context or in the private place, but also in a public place. So later on, I will present the laws which covers not only domestic violence, but also commission of gender-based violence in public. Also, according to Plan International, gender-based violence against children specifically refers to the violence inflicted on a child due to stereotypes and roles. This was mentioned by Ma'am Brenda earlier in her message. So attributed to or expected of them according to their sex or gender identity. So these stereotypes and roles, this is actually what I'm saying earlier, that it is already embedded in our psyche. It is embedded in our consciousness that you as a woman, you just do this, you do that, you are limited to doing this, you're limited to doing that. Well, while a man could do anything he wants. So that would be the stereotypes and roles. Actually, before I had a conversation with a friend, and he said, if you are fighting for women's rights, then you should not expect men to give you seats in a public transportation. So if there are no vacant seats in a public transportation, then you should stand up, just like us, men. So you don't expect us to give you that seat of ours simply because you're a woman. So is that the meaning of eradicating stereotypes and roles? So if you look at it, stereotypes and roles may also be it is embedded in our psyche, and also it is enhanced by the culture that we are in, the society, and how society views men and women and other gender or sexual orientation. So my answer there is, well, supposed to be, ideally, you should not really give us those those seats of yours, because well, if we are fighting for the eradication of these stereotypes and roles attributed to women, then we should also act in a way that we should not be branded as such. So we have to accept it. We have to accept the fact that we are fighting for our equal access to services in our society with men. That if you are fighting for that, then it means that you should also act in a way that you should not tell men that, oh, you should do this for us, you should do that for us. Okay, so in a way, act in accordance with what you are fighting for. So that is what I think is relevant, or what I'm saying in this part of in this condition, stereotypes, and roles. So moving on, I think I'm already talking a lot. So moving on, the United Nations also defined gender-based violence based on physical, sexual, and psychological harm. So as we can see here, the economic abuse is not yet part of it. So probably because this declaration was made way before they saw the effect of economic abuses in women. So let us not now talk about laws on gender-based violence. So again, to clarify, when I say gender-based violence here, I'm talking about violence against acts of violence committed against women and girls. Okay, so it does not cover the other aspect of gender, or the other part of gender. So we have here the first law, which was enacted in 1995. However, prior to this, the development of legislations in the Philippines, which is committed to protect women, started after the martial law era of President Marcos. So, because of it could have been because of the sitting president, okay, which who was a woman, or it could also be because of the improvement or the development of democratic processes in the Philippines. So during after the revolution of 1986, so there were clamors for democracy, for freedom, for rights, and it has been the opportunity for it had been the opportunity for women groups or women organizations to lobby women's rights. So it paved a way for women's organizations to lobby legislations, laws, and other ordinances, issuances, government actions that would protect women against abuses. So the first one is the enactment of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995. So this law was later on expanded by the Safe Spaces Act of 2018. So that's the recent legislation on gender-based violence. So what is this Anti-Sexual Harassment Act? So it was limited to commission of gender-based sexual harassment within work, education, or training related institutions. So it was the first law which introduced the creation of the Committee on Decorum and Investigation. So since 1995, we already have the CODI. And this CODI is part of the Gender and Development Office of different institutions. So God was also created by this Anti-Sexual Harassment Act. Now, so if it was already in effect in 1995, so how many years? It has been 15 years since this Anti-Sexual Harassment Act was enacted, and only few of us, or only few students, for that matter, know that they have protection in the law even before the Safe Spaces Act was enacted. Okay, so ito po ang pinakaunang batas na nagpoprotekta sa mga estudyante. Okay, sa loob ng eskwelahan at hindi lang sa loob ng school, kundi sa training institution. So even in your let's say out of school activities, out of school trainings, you are protected, okay, and against sexual harassment under this act. Okay, so later on we will discuss the Safe Spaces Act as well, but only in passing the salient points of that act, which expanded this act. So you will see the mechanisms on how students could report or file complaints against offenders or those who commit persons who commit sexual harassment. So the difference of this act with the later act is here the emphasis is on the offender that the offender has authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over the victim. So kaya siguro before, if you've been exposed to different news, ang lagi nating naririnig ay moral ascendancy. The teachers have moral ascendancy, that administrators of school have moral ascendancy. And that is because of this law, wherein the offender must have that authority or that power over. So this may be a result of the idea that gender inequality is actually created by the power play between a man and woman. And we know that in that power play, it's the man who is in control or who is more powerful than women. So that's why they would always look at it as someone who may commit sexual harassment must have power over, okay, the victim. So that was the idea. So they did not take in consideration that it could be that both are powerful, or maybe there would be a slight difference or gap in power, but it may happen not only it may be committed, sexual harassment may be committed not only by those who have authority or influence or moral ascendancy over another, but also by those who are in similar hegemonic level. Let's say student to student. So this law, that condition, that situation was the one envisioned by the Safe Spaces Act. Also, sexual harassment may also be committed not by someone who is powerful. It may be committed by someone powerless, and yet he or she would exert or he or she would act in violation of or he or she would commit sexual harassment to another person who is even more powerful than him or her. So dito siguro nga yung thinking before is yung power play, that man is more powerful than women, or man is more powerful than women and children. So ngayon sa Safe Spaces Act, they removed, they expanded that even those who are in the same level of power, of control, they would either of them could commit sexual harassment against either of them. Okay. So next we have the enactment of the Anti-Rape Act of 1997. So here, this is a revision or amendment of the revised penal code provision on rape. So before, rape only happens between a man and a woman, and that is man as the offender and woman as the victim. Okay. Now, rape was expanded by this enactment, this RA 8353, to cover not only to cover rape, not only between man and woman, but also it may happen between a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. Yeah. And through, they call that rape by sexual assault. Okay. And this act also introduced marital rape. Okay. So before, when the husband would try to exert force over his wife to have sexual intercourse, before that is part of marital life. But now, women, if it is against their will to have that sexual intercourse, and they were forced by their husband to do it, then it can be considered as marital rape. So the difference between marital rape and the ordinary or the regular rape or rape by sexual assault, or outside non-marital rape, is that in marital rape, the offender can be pardoned by the victim. So here, even if the wife filed a complaint against the husband for marital rape, but later on, the wife pardoned, okay, ang tawag doon, naawa siya. So inalis niya na yung complaint, pinatawad niya yung kanyang asawa. So nawawala yung the complaint is dismissed because of that. Then we have the establishment of the family courts during that same year as the Anti-Rape Act. So what is the significant jurisdiction of this family court as to gender-based violence? So we have these cases of domestic violence against women and children. They can now be filed before a family court, and sorry. Okay, so it can be filed within the family court, and confidentiality of identities of these victims are protected, or it is not encouraged. It's strictly implemented by this court. So if I could not move it anymore. So anyway, so the jurisdiction is not only on the abuse committed against women, but also against children. If you see, wala na, sorry. Children are protected not only sexually, but also they are protected against any form of violence in there. So any violence committed against the children, they can be filed with the family courts. And in practice, family courts would create executive, or they would hear the case through an executive session wherein only the offender or the victim and their counsels are there, or the judge can talk to the victim if it is if the case is very sensitive, it's only the judge that would talk to the victim, and the victim and the offender are separated from each other. They do not see each other simply because the victim always feel that there would always be a possibility of harm that can be committed against them. I cannot move it. Ayun. Uh-oh. Sorry. Okay. So that's the family court. Now, in 1998, there was an enactment for the assistance of rape victims. So assistance and protection for rape victims. This paved the way to the establishment of Rape Crisis Center. And in this Rape Crisis Center, they have psychological counseling. They also provide protection to the victims. And those who handle the Rape Crisis Center, they are trained to handle or to manage the emotional stress, psychological stress of these rape victims. So we have that. According to the law, it should be the establishment of this center is for every local government unit. However, due to the funding, limited funding, this rape crisis center is not established by all, or LGUs do, other LGUs do not have the capacity to establish it due to funding. But the law states that all local government units should establish such center. In this act, it also include the rape shield rule. So the rape shield rule talks about the protection of rape victims during trial, that, or during hearing or trial of their case, that any sexual relationship or any commission of the same crime, or if you have a sexual relationship with that person, or before you have a sexual relationship with another person, then it will not be taken against you. That, well, you consented because you already had previous sexual relationships. Okay. So under this rape shield rule, by the way, this is in connection to the idea of rape before, that rape can only committed against those women who are chaste, okay, or what we call they are still untouched or virgin. They did not have any sexual intercourse before. So that is the concept of rape in RPC, in the Revised Penal Code. But in this act, in this RA 8505, it is not necessarily that rape may be committed against those chaste women. So pwede siya even if you have previous sexual intercourse with other persons. So yun yung tinatawag na rape shield rule. So hindi na siya, it will not be taken against you kasi before, kailangan hindi ka pa na-touch para maging legitimate victim ka. So ngayon, kahit meron ng ganun, because the idea of rape here is not on the person, but rather on the power exerted over that person. So power pa rin, power and control. And of course, that that person was forced, coerced, or he or she did not consent to the commission of such sexual intercourse. Yan. So before, ganun yung idea na kapag hindi ka na chaste, hindi ka legitimate victim ng rape. So ngayon sa Rape Victims Assistance Act of 1998, hindi ko sinasabing legitimate, don't take the word legitimate, don't take it offensive. Pag sinabing legitimate, ibig sabihin, you can be prosecuted or you can get a guilty verdict. Ganon. So, before, chaste lang. Ngayon, even unchaste. So, they are covered by rape. So, if we look at the development of the concept of rape. So, dati, man-woman lang. Man offender, woman victim. Woman victim must be chaste. Otherwise, it will be taken against her and it may be the cause for the not guilty verdict against the offender. Now, rape can happen between man and woman and woman, and man. And if you have a previous sexual relationships or intercourse, you committed previous sexual intercourse, it will not be taken against you. Okay, you can still get guilty verdict, okay, from an offender. So now we have an act declaring unlawful the matching of this Filipino mail order brides. So this happened during the introduction of technology. So ito na yung hindi lang siya mail as in mail. It could mean email, as the use of technology. So ngayon, it can be covered under the Anti-Trafficking Against Women and Children or Anti-Trafficking Against Persons Act of 2003. So here, it's not necessary that the consent of trafficked persons are given. Kasi 'di ba yung minsan yung iba, like if they are economically they don't have economic capacity to sustain their lifestyle or their lives. So usually, sila yung vulnerable for trafficking. So ito yung mga ino-offeran sila na, you work, I will be giving you work here in this country or in this place. Bibigyan kita ng ganitong sweldo. Pero later on, these persons, they would be the subject of trafficking. Okay, so they will be sold, or they would even be prostitute. They will be subjects to prostitution. Okay, so trafficking is a public crime. So if it is a public crime, it means that the government or anyone could actually report. Hindi siya by person. Hindi katulad halimbawa ng rape. Sa rape, kailangan yung complainant ang mag-complain. Okay? Although later on, once na the complaint is in there, the victims will now be or the complainants, okay, will now be substituted by the government. Okay, pero kailangan yung private person pa rin yung magfa-file. So dito, pwede siyang government or anyone who is in authority to file a case for trafficking, so they can do that. So kahit hindi yung mismong traffic persons. So mandatory services for traffic persons. So katulad din to ng rape victim crisis center. And there is an interagency committee on trafficking. So this involves DOJ, DILG, and other agencies of the government. Okay, so the most important, okay, I think sabi nga nila, this is a landmark legislation, RA 9262, which provides for broad definition of violence against women, to include, again, economic abuse. So, sino ba ang mga possible targets or subjects ng violence against women? So, it could be wife or former wife. So, before, napaka-strict ng law as to marital relationship. So, ngayon, pwedeng wife, pwedeng former wife. So, hindi na necessarily na you are in a marital relationship, okay, legal marital relationship. Okay, and then second is you have a person has a sexual or dating relationship with another person. It can be committed within or without the family abode. So sabi ko nga kanina, hindi na necessary na nasa loob lang ng bahay, kayo lang ang nakakakita. So pwedeng if it is committed in public, so that would be punishable under this act. So ano ba yung violent acts na yon? Or what are those gender-based violence that are committed? So again, it's the physical, sexual, psychological harm, or economic abuse. This may include threats, coercion, again, arbitrary detention, anything that would cause physical, sexual, psychological harm, or suffering, or economic abuse to any of these persons from A to C. And what is the site of the commission of the crime? Anywhere. Okay, so it could be anywhere, within or without the family abode. So in RA 9262, we have civil remedies such as the Barangay Protection Order. So kaya ngayon, tingnan nyo sa mga barangay nyo, you have VAW, barangay VAW desks, supposed to be. So yan yung una, bago pumunta sa women's desk ng PNP. So in there, if you have experienced any of this listed, okay, violence against women and children or girls, you can ask for a barangay protection order. Okay, provided that you are one of A, B, and C. Ayan. Kasi baka wala ka namang dating relationship or hindi ka naman wife or former wife, magfa-file ka ng violation of RA 9262. So, importante din yung subject. Sino ba ang mga considered as victims sa RA 9262? So, ayan. So, wife, former wife, has sexual or dating relationship. Ngayon, does it mean that yung mga lalaki na nasa dating relationship, okay, yung iba yung sexual orientation, yung part ng what we call the SOGI, does it mean na pwede silang mag-file ng violation of RA 9262? Wala namang sinabing babae lang. Ang sinabi is partner. Okay, so my partner. Yan. So anyone could actually, anyone who is in a sexual or dating relationship can file or invoke RA 9262 if they have been victims of physical, sexual, psychological, economic abuse from another person, whether it is a man or a woman. Okay. So again, yung remedies natin. So if you are, ito kasi ang barangay protection order, this is the most accessible kasi yun yung nasa barangay nyo. Yun yung pinakamalapit sa possible site for the commission of the offense, of the crime. So, tsaka hindi siya, ang barangay protection order, temporary or preliminary act lang siya para so that you will be protected from the offender. Same as with the temporary protection order. Now, yung permanent protection order, usually, ina-avail to ng mga asawa who were victims of their husband's abuse para hindi na makapunta sa kanila yung offender, so that totally they would have a separate life. They will not have the relationship will be severed. Talagang mawawala na yung connection nila. Now, if the man is found guilty of violation of RA 9262, could it be ground for the nullity of marriage? Ayan. So, no. The answer is no. But it could be a ground for legal separation. Okay? So, criminal action can be filed anytime. Okay? Anytime after the commission of the crime. Okay. So that is the RA 9262. Kaya for all those who have husbands, yung mga married na, o kaya yung mga nasa sexual or dating relationship, bakit nga pala ito lang yung ito yung subject, ito yung mga victims, ang profile ng victims ng RA 9262. Kasi usually violence happen, well, most of the time violence happen when there is a relationship between the offender and the victim. Although alam naman natin that violence can be committed even without any relationship. Okay? So, again, later legislations covered that. Pero dito sa RA 9262, ang premise nila is it's because there is a relationship, and that relationship, mostly that relationship is the cause of violence. Okay? So now we move on to 9710. So here, ito naman, it covers, sinabi na ni, kanina ni Ma'am Brenda, yung equitable access to employment and education. So the Magna Carta of Women, this gives task to the government to ensure that there is equitable access for men and women in all services of the government. So hindi lang actually employment and education, in other services as well. Pero dito sa Magna Carta of Women, merong mga specific provisions na relative to employment, like the leave benefits for women. So ito yung 2 months na if you have if you have undergone gynecological surgeries, so you will be given 2 months paid leaves to. Okay. And it was also in this act that the 5% allocation for God was, kasi sa RA 9262, hindi. Sa Anti-Sexual Harassment Act. Okay. Meron na siyang God. Pero hindi sinabi kung magkano. So it's the 5% allocation for God na indicated sa Magna Carta of Women. Ayan. So if you are looking for the rights of women, dito ka, kaya nga Magna Carta. So from the title itself, it covers all rights that you can invoke. Okay? In order to have access, okay, to services offered by the government. So gagamitin mo yung Magna Carta of Women. By the way, siguro relevant ito sa mga students kasi included in this act is the equal access or equitable access of men and women or male-female students. So there is a provision here which states that as much as possible, there must be an equal, kung hindi man equal 50-50, the number of students, female and male students, must, as much as possible, be on the same level. So kung 50 ang males, 50 din ang females sa school. So yun yung isang provision ng RA 9710. Although ngayon, mukhang, well, kasi mas marami ang population ng babae, and women are given more access to education and any other primary services. Yung statistics, naglilin na siya towards women. Mas marami na ang nagkakaroon ng access sa education na babae compared sa lalaki. So, but would it mean that the inequalities are gone? So, not necessarily. So, kasi pwedeng you are given access to education but later on in the employment, hindi ka pa rin binibigyan ng equal opportunity as that of man. So, meron pa ring discrepancy. Although, sabi ko kanina, this kind of developments na halos nagkakaroon na ng equal or equitable access ang babae at lalaki sa edukasyon. So, isang step na siya. Although later on, sabi ko nga, hindi pa siya yung total eradication ng inequality. The inequality may exist, and women are still marginalized even if there is already an equitable access to education. Okay? Kaya continue lang, tuloy-tuloy yung ating campaign, okay, for women empowerment. So now we have here the Safe Spaces Act of 2018. So sabi ko kanina, it expanded gender-based sexual harassment. Okay? Does this cover, again, yung LGBTQI? Yes, it covers everybody. It covers all gender. Does it cover all forms of violence? Okay, so this act is very specific. It is just pertaining to sexual harassment. So gender-based sexual harassment. So halimbawa, what if meron akong, or I am a woman and I was harassed, okay, because of being a woman, pero hindi sexual yung harassment. Is it covered by the Safe Spaces Act? Okay, so before, in my reading, those kinds of harassment, even not sexual, is covered. But based on consultations with the crafters or the drafters of the IRR, they said that the gender-based harassment here pertains to sexual harassment, not other forms of harassment. So, did we cover all forms of violence against gender-based violence in the introduction of the Safe Spaces Act? Not yet. So, kulang pa rin yung batas natin. So, kung titingnan natin, ang RA 9262, it will just cover yung wife, former wife, and those who are in a dating or have a sexual relationship. Ngayon, anong klaseng violence yon? So, yung sexual, physical, psychological, and economic abuse. So, those are the violence covered by that act. So, sino yung mga hindi kasama? Malamang yung walang relationship. So, kapag wala kayong relationship, so you are not covered by RA 9262. Will you be covered by RA 11313? It depends. So, covered ka as a person, however, yung act, yung offense committed, it's limited to sexual harassment. So, other forms of harassment is not yet covered by the Safe Spaces Act. So, hindi pa encompassing yung mga batas natin as to gender. So, siguro that's the reason why ngayon there are bills proposed as to anti-discrimination na covered pa rin yung women and other genders. Kasi nga hindi pa all-encompassing, may mga portions na hindi pa rin na nako-cover ng mga existing laws natin. So, ano yung included dito sa Safe Spaces Act? Ayan. So, ito, mahilig nating gawin to. Ang tawag dyan? To interact through virtual platforms. Ayan. So, yung interaction na yan, kapag merong sexual harassment, so meron ng batas na nag-govern dyan, and that is what we call the Safe Spaces Act of 2018. So, meron na doon online gender-based sexual harassment. Okay? So, ngayon, paano mo malalaman na sexually harassed ka? Okay. So, titingnan natin mamaya yung mga cases. Although, wala pa akong nababasa na online. The Supreme Court decided online gender-based sexual harassment case. So, wala pa akong gano'n. Pero, yung mga hindi online na pwedeng by analogy be applied to file an online gender-based sexual harassment. So, pwede natin gamitin yung mga cases existing cases decided by the Supreme Court on sexual harassment. And then we have, gender-based sexual harassment in public places. So, this includes streets and public transport. So, marami na tayong nababalitaan tungkol sa ganitong klaseng sexual harassment. Lately, yung news tungkol sa isang babae na she was robbed by riding in tandem, and then she was not robbed. Somebody riding a motorcycle asked about directions about something, to a woman. And after giving a response, that man in riding a motorcycle touched the breast of that woman. So, may relasyon ba sila? Wala silang relasyon, pero merong sexual harassment na nangyari. So, kaya that kind of offense, that kind of act is covered by RA 11313. So gender-based sexual harassment in public places. Same as with yung mga driver, 'di ba, na nabalitaan natin, jeepney drivers, PUV drivers na they would touch yung legs ng kanilang passengers. Ayan. So it's covered under this act. So now, yung sinasabi ko kanina sa Anti-Sexual Harassment Act ng 1995, moral ascendancy was very important sa offender. Dito, kahit sino, kasama pa rin yun. It is included. It is just expanded to cover not only those who have moral ascendancy. So kahit peers, they can commit sexual harassment. So magkakaibigan, parang estudyante, pwede pa rin magkaroon ng sexual harassment sa RA 11313. Okay. So let us now move on to the cases. So ito, this one, it's a case of husband and wife with 2 children. Si Ricky Dinamlang, he was a police officer, and every time he's drunk, pag umuwi siya sa bahay, parang ano siya, it's our common image of a man who drinks, and then pag dating ng bahay, lasing na lasing, he would punch, he would kick, or in short, he would inflict, okay, harm sa kanyang mga kasama sa bahay, especially sa kanyang asawa. Okay? And then, yun nga, isa sa mga limitations natin, or lalo na sa application ng RA 9262, is yung protection against this kind of people kay Ricky Dinamlang, kasi police officer siya. So if you are a wife, meron ka bang lakas ng loob na magsumbong sa police o kaya sa barangay ng asawa mong police, okay, is harassing you or is abusing you? Ayan. So kaya siguro napakaliit ng number ng reported cases kasi yung mga victims, they would also think of their survival of their life. Kasi their lives will be at risk if they would report the abuse inflicted on them by their husbands or by their partners who are government officials, who are government enforcers or law enforcers. Kaya kung titingnan natin, the woman is really in the very disadvantaged position. Okay, na kahit gusto niyang magsalita, bago pa siya makapagsalita, kailangan niya munang isipin yung welfare niya, pati welfare ng kanyang mga anak. Ayan. So dati, ang problema nila is how to maintain a whole family. Kasi 'di ba we have stereotype, Filipinos have stereotype na kailangan buo lagi ang pamilya. So yun yung dilemma ngayon ng mga mothers. If we will report the abuses of my husband, paano naman yung pamilya ko? So magkakaroon ng broken family yung mga anak ko. So yan yung dating dilemma. Ngayon, ang dilemma is, although I think it's still existing, nag-exist pa rin yung ganong dilemma na kahit we continue on educating or informing them that they have rights, that they could live even outside their husband's support, hindi pa rin. In practice kasi, ideally, madaling isipin. But in practice, mahirap siyang gawin. Okay? So ganito na, these are the limitations. So the limitation is yung culture mo. Pangalawa is yung offender usually, yun nga, may moral ascendancy or even they have positions in the government. Ayan. So mahirap mag-report, mahirap magsalita. Okay? Pero again, hindi natin sila, we cannot judge them as as having no courage. Kasi we were not, unless we are in the same position siguro, and then we were strong enough or brave enough to cut the tie, okay? And to end the cycle of violence. Okay? Bihira kasi. So most of the women, ganun pa rin yung thinking. Okay? Na they are attached to their family. They are attached to their husband. Ayan. So kahit meron na tayong mga cases, may mga laws tayo, even if the Supreme Court would tell you na, okay, you have rights. We can put them in bars. Okay? So kahit may mga ganong encouragement, okay, when you are already in the position or you are in that situation, so medyo mahirap din talagang mag-decide. So anyway, moving on. So ito, so police officer siya, he's abusing his wife, not only inside the house, but also even in public. Ayan. So, kung may time kayong basahin yung case, so ayan yung GR number, maawa kayo dun sa wife. Okay? Pero hindi pa to ang worst scenario na mababasa nyo of cases. Okay? Pero yun nga, nakakaawa siya, not because she's a woman, but because as a person, kahit tao na lang, as a tao, she was publicly ridiculed talaga. Okay, in here. So kaya, well, the Supreme Court decided to sentence, dinamlang of imprisonment. Yan. So hindi lang yun, two counts siya. So ang maximum na binigay na sentence is 23 years of imprisonment. Okay? So kahit prison mayoril lang siya, nagmukha siyang life imprisonment, 20 years. Reclusion perpetua na siya. Okay? So, kaya if you experience this kind of abuses, don't be afraid. Kasi marami naman tayong, marami nang nakalagay or na-iset ang gobyerno natin na protections, okay, against women and children. Ayan. So ito na yung diniscuss ko kanina, yung offended party, so woman, child, okay? So just the same. And then we have this case. So if you notice, yung title ng case walang pangalan, okay? So to protect the identity of the petitioners or the respondents or the offender and the victim. Ayan. So sabi nga dito, ito pala, this case is about, ito na yung usong-uso, pangangaliwa ng infidelity. This is marital infidelity. Ayan, palagay. So, dati, walang before RA 9262, there is no way for a woman to file a complaint against her husband for marital infidelity. Pwede siguro ilagay siya before as psychological incapacity or as one of the grounds for legal separation. Pero hindi siya criminalized, in short. Hindi crime. So ngayon, yung marital infidelity, hindi naman, sabi nga dito, RA 9262 criminalizes not marital infidelity per se, but the psychological violence causing mental or emotional suffering on the wife. Ayan. So kaya yung mga celebrities ngayon, 'di ba, when they are not supported by their husbands, or if or former husbands, they would file for RA 9262. Not because they were not given support, although part of economic abuse is support, but because of the psychological violence, yun, yung anguish daw, ganyan, yung feeling na yung emotional stress na dinulot sa wife nung ginawa nung husband. So, yun yung pinapinalize ng RA 9262. So, kaya be careful. Okay? So, yung mga yung mga nagbabalak, ayan. So, pwede na po kayong makasuhan kapag kayo ay ang tawag doon, sumakabilang bahay. Ayan. So, marital infidelity per se is not a crime, but the psychological violence causing mental or emotional suffering on the wife is criminal. Okay? Or is a crime, sorry. Yan. So, we are now down to our the last part of my presentation. So, this one, I got this from the United Nations Fund for population activities. Ayan. Gender-based violence enhanced by COVID-19 pandemic. So, even before the pandemic, sabi nga ni Miss Brenda kanina, meron ng gender-based violence. Okay? Prevalent na siya. Now, during the pandemic, mas naging vulnerable pa ang women and children to gender-based violence. Okay? Bakit? Kasi now, they are restricted in their movement. They are advised to stay at home. So, kung dati, pwede ka pang umalis sa bahay. Okay, so makakaiwas ka pa sa gender-based violence. Ngayon, hindi mo na maiiwasan kasi you are restricted in your movement and you are told to stay at home. Ayan. So kaya mas lalong nagiging vulnerable tayo sa gender-based violence. It also worsened existing inequalities for women and girls kasi lalong-lalo na in terms of the reproductive health care. So, ayan. Kasi ngayon, yun nga, restricted yung movement natin, we stay at home, naka-lockdown tayo. So, yung mga services na supposed to be given for reproductive health care, so hindi na siya napoprovide. Kasi nga, we are too preoccupied with the COVID-19 disease. So, hindi na natin nabibigyang pansin itong reproductive health care. So marami ngayong women, pregnant women, they could not have their prenatal checkups. They are not, some of them would have involuntary abortions kasi hindi na bibigyang pansin yung kanilang reproductive health. And siguro isa pa is yung tinatawag na dumadaming COVID-19 pandemic babies, 'di ba? Kasi nga reproductive health care is hampered. Okay? The services for this are hampered. Kaya malamang because you are lockdown babies pala ang tawag nila, lockdown baby. So dahil naka-lockdown ka, wala ka naman sigurong ibang magawa. So, hindi maiwasan. Ayan, so kaya dumadami. Okay? Yung population natin. And then we have economic and social stress. Ayan. So pandemic depends economic and social stress due to lockdown measures. Okay? So kaya hindi lang siya dumadami ang magnanakaw dahil wala ng mga trabaho, kundi marami rin ang nagiging abusers dahil sa stress, sa economic and social stress. Ikaw nga naman mawala ng trabaho, so emotionally and psychologically you become unstable. Yung iba nadidepress, then they would let it out, yung stress nila, yung depression nila sa mga kasama nila sa bahay. Okay? In the form of abuses. Ayan. So, this is the statistics from UNFPA kung gaano estimated monthly risk incidence on women and adolescent girls that may increase due to COVID-19. Projections lang naman ito. Okay. So, kung titingnan natin, ang laki ng projections nila, lalo na sa spousal sexual violence. Okay. Kasi nga, due to lockdown and the stress, the emotional and psychological stress that, economic stress that people experience because of the pandemic. So kaya prevalent ang abuses. Okay. Ayan, so it's now, I will now conclude my presentation with an encouragement. So siguro yun naman talaga ang purpose ng activity na to, for us to stand up for the rights of women and children, or even include siguro other gender, other sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Kasi it's very difficult to fight for your right as a woman if there are other rights that are violated and there are other marginalized sectors that are unheard. So gender-based violence is still existing. Okay, we cannot deny that. Hence, we should continue our fight against it. Okay. So wag tayong mapapagod kahit napakatagal na. It took centuries for women to be recognized. Recognized pa lang yun. Recognition pa lang. Okay? To be heard. Okay. As to the equal opportunities or equal access to services and opportunities, we are still lobbying on that. Although sa Philippines, masaya tayo kapag our leaders will be composed of, let's say, 1:5, 1 woman, 5 men. Diba? Masaya na yung mga babae dyan. Pero kulang pa. Okay? So we still have to work. And then, as to employment, siguro, kailangan pa rin i-work out, although nasa developing stage naman siya. May progress naman, in short. And then, pandemic is enhancing the commission of gender-based violence against women and children. Ayan. This is a reality. So, kahit sobrang dami nating batas, sabi ko nga kanina, we have so many laws, Supreme Court decisions that can be used to protect ourselves. However, the realities, okay, yung nangyayari mismo in practice, in actuality, okay, it's very difficult to rise, okay, or to fight against gender-based violence. But if you know that there are others, okay, there are others who will support you. Hindi ka nag-iisa, sabi nga kanina, narinig ko yung motivation na yon, na you should always think that you are not alone in this fight. Okay? So sabi ko nga dyan, we need to act together to protect each other. Walang ibang paraan but to help each other. Kasi one person wouldn't have the courage to fight. Diba? Kasi medyo madi-discourage pa siya kasi mag-isa lang siya. But if there are more than one or there are others who will support him or her in her act or in her fight against violence, then definitely such support, such unity could lead to something. Okay, could create a society that is more respectful and a society that would view women in her own image and not in the image that the society itself created her. Okay, so the last sentence here is be more proactive. So we don't just act if the violence is already there. We should avoid it if possible. Okay, or as much as possible. We should create an environment, sabi nga kanina, which is safer or safe for all of us. Not only for women and children, but again, for all genders. Okay? So thank you. That's all for this morning. I hope you have learned something from my talk. Hello po.
Thank you so much.
Parang ang dami ko yatang sinabi. So we are now in open forum. Miss Martina.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Francis May Segui. And now we're going to proceed with our open forum. I would like to welcome Miss Eden K. Kalapit as our moderator. Okay, if you have questions, you can comment on our FB Live, on our YouTube Live, and you can also comment on our chat box. Attorney, meron na pong question dito. Parang si Miss Eden po is unstable ang internet connection. Ito po, from Sherilyn Furman. Hello po, is it still acceptable and valid if a woman filed a case 10 years after the time of harassment? Ulitin ko lang po, is it still acceptable and valid if a woman filed a case 10 years after the time of harassment?
We're talking about sexual harassment here. Siguro, no? Sexual harassment. For sexual harassment, there is a prescriptive period for that. So 10 years, I guess, is the prescriptive period. Now, the question is as to where to file. Kasi if it is 10 years already, probably the offender and the victim is already outside of the school. So it depends on the situation. So if the school is already out of jurisdiction, then the woman cannot file an administrative case anymore. Or if the woman can file instead a criminal action. So criminal action, hindi naman siya nagpiprescribe. I mean, may 10 years yung prescription niya. So ang as to the administrative case, so yun yung medyo maiksi ang prescription kasi kino-consider niya yung mga conditions dun sa whether the person is still part of the company, the person is still part of the school. Ayan. Pero if it is a criminal case, a woman can still file it even after 10 years. Sexual harassment, sexual harassment. Okay, Miss Martina.
Okay po. Another question po. If my neighbor is being harassed by her husband and she has no courage to report it to the barangay or police, is it okay if I'm the one who will be going to report it?
Yan, okay. As to, siguro hindi harassment. Ang ano siguro dito is abuse, which will fall under RA 9262. Okay? So, that that person can report. The what do you call that? The neighbor can report. However, the barangay or the police will not have so much authority to deal with the case until or unless it's the wife that would file the report or the complaint. Pero pwede po yun. Pwedeng sabihin ng kapitbahay na merong nangyayari sa kapitbahay ko. Okay? Ngayon, the law enforcers could address the issue, but they do not have the authority to, let's say, go inside or force entry into the abode or the house of that person or the offender. Kasi nga, hindi mismo yung victim ang nag-report. Pero kung yung victim, pwedeng kunin kaagad or pwedeng magkaroon ng authority yung mga enforcers natin to arrest. Okay? To arrest the offender. Ayan. So, pwede yun. Pwedeng kasi reporting is not prohibited. You can report. Okay? Kasi, sabi nga nila, di ba, if there is no report, usually, if you will not inform the law enforcers, hindi nila alam na meron palang ganun. However, yun nga, as to the authority nila, wala silang authority. Pero, again, they could encourage the wife. Diba? It's the first step. At least malalaman ng wife na, ay, may nakakaalam na hindi lang ako. Ayun. So, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina, na pag nalaman ng isang tao na walang courage to report, na meron palang ibang tao na magsusuporta sa kanya in her fight, then there is a probability that she will have courage to report it. Ayun. Pero sa batas, ayun, so walang authority yung mga law enforcer. So kailangan yung victim mismo yung mag-file ng report or ng complaint. Ayan. Okay, Ms. Martina.
So,
Okay.
thank you po. Another question po from our Executive Director and Provost. What shall a wife claiming for marital rape present in order to substantiate her complaint against her husband?
Okay, it would be medico-legal pa rin, just like rape. Okay? So, kailangan mag-undergo siya ng check-up to see. Kasi, I read it somewhere, I just forgot kung saan, that if there is an exertion of force which is on the woman, which is not consented, talagang na-coerce siya to have sexual intercourse, merong evidence sa kanyang katawan, okay? Yung physical composition and even yung genitalia, meron siyang evidence na makukuha. Kumbaga, may evidence ng force. Ganon. So, kaya kailangan makita, kailangan pa-check up siya to see that there is really a coercion on the part of the husband. Yun. So, yun lang. Otherwise, kung walang medico-legal, kung walang what do you call that? Medical certificate, it's she says, he says, di ba? Parang although the court now, unlike before, the court now always most of the time, lean towards the wife or the victim. Sorry, sir, pero it's already, karamihan po sa mga cases na nababasa ko. Unlike before, um, yung stigma, 'di ba? Yung stigma sa sexually abused woman nag-exist pa even sa courts before. Ngayon siguro dahil marami na ring women judges, ayan. And siguro nga our campaign is to end violence against women is already affecting, may impact na siya. So kaya yung stigma na yon unti-unting nawawala. Kaya ang Supreme Court ngayon, they're leaning towards the victim. Provided that may credibility talaga, sincere, kahit siya lang. Okay, minsan kahit yung testimony lang nung victim is enough. Okay? Pero yun nga, the medical legal certificate is more binding document to ensure guilt of the offender. Pero if walang ganon, walang kakayahan magganon yung babae, as long as you really are, the court will be, as long as the court will be, ang tawag doon, you would be sincere. Makikita nila na talagang nangyari siya. Hindi siya nagsisinungaling. Okay? Kasi nga, siguro isa ring idea is, it's very difficult for us, for a victim to speak. Kaya, kinoconsider din ng mga courts yun. Kapag nagsalita ang victim, ibig sabihin, totoo yun. Kasi kapag nagsalita siya, marami ang consequences, di ba? Masistigmatize siya, others will judge her. So kaya sino ka ba naman na babae na magugustuhin na that you will be in that position, that you will be stigmatized, 'di ba? So wala naman siguro. Parang yun yung idea ng court na walang babaeng magsasalita kung hindi talaga nangyari sa kanya.
Yeah.
Hope I answered the question of Sir Rowell.
Okay po. Thank you po. So another question po from our Facebook chat po muna. In RA 9262, is it possible if I file a case against the mistress but not to the husband?
Oh, mistress lang, hindi na yung husband.
Yes po.
Wala pang ganong case. And usually, both the husband and the mistress are considered as respondents. Pwede yon magkasama. Pero kung mistress lang, hindi applicable sa hindi kasi siya ang tawag diyan is she's not privy to the commission of the crime. Hindi niya pwedeng makommit yung crime kung wala yung isa. So kung marital infidelity ang nag-cause, so usually pwede mong gawing respondent sila pareho. Pero hindi pwede yung mistress lang. Kasi hindi naman pwedeng makommit ng mistress yung marital infidelity ng husband kung hindi kasama yung husband. Ayun. So I hope I answered the question.
Oh, thank you po. From another question po from Professor Nolly de Ramos. Do we owe our spouses sex?
It's one of your obligation as in the family code. But again, hindi siya forced. Okay? You are not required that you have a sexual intercourse with your husband or wife. Okay? However, for sa family code kasi, it's one of the obligations for reproduction. Okay? Para sa creation siya ng family. Okay? Kasi doon, kapag hindi mo siya na-fulfill, it can be cause for legal separation. Kapag hindi na-fulfill yung duty. Okay? Or minsan, kapag hindi na-fulfill yung duty ng sexual intercourse, it can be considered as psychological incapacity, which can be a ground for the nullity of marriage or annulment ng marriage. Okay? Pero as to obligation, do we owe our partner sex?
Depends.
It depends. If it is for family, for reproduction, then yes. And at the same time, if you are not really, let's say, you are not in the proper mindset or condition or state to be in, to have that kind of intercourse or sexual intercourse, then you have the right to say no. Siguro naman hindi naman sa lahat ng oras magno-no ka. 'Di ba? Kasi the reason why, one of the reasons why you entered into a relationship is to have that to be in a sexual relationship. Unless talagang kayong dalawa ayaw nyo naman magkaroon na ayaw nyo naman enter into sexual intercourse, ganyan. Pero mostly, 'di ba? You get married, you marry because you want to have a family. So yun yung idea ng family code. Kaya actually it's an obligation, one of your duties as husband or wife. Okay? Pero it should not be forced upon you. Okay? So may say ka pa rin. Kaya merong marital rape. So ngayon, buti wala pang nagtatanong, paano kapag lalaki? Pwede bang mag-file ang husband? Wala pa po tayong batas dyan. Okay? So just to be clear. Baka sa feeling ko may magtatanong na naman mamaya. Ayan. So wala pa po. Sa babae pa lang. Kasi nga, meron kasing yun nga, may mga state of mind or may mga conditions siguro na yung babae ay hindi niya feel to have sexual intercourse. So hindi siya dapat pilitin. Ayan. So kung yung wife naman ang mamimilit sa husband, siguro ang idea doon is yung husband ay laging may lagi siyang may karapatan na magsabi ng no. Yan. Kaya hindi na siguro binigyan ng batas pa. Or maybe in the future, baka may ganong cases na lumabas. Okay. Pero as of now, yun yung idea. Since ang mga babae, they are still considered as less powerful. Okay, medyo powerless pa rin ang idea. So, hindi siya makapag-say ng no. Kaya merong marital rape. Samantalang yung husband, powerful pa rin ang tingin sa kanya, meron siyang power to say no. Ayan. So, kaya wala pang husband version ng marital rape. Ayan. So, I hope I answered the question.
Okay po, another question po. Kung yun po bang pag ang isang babae ay nagpakita ng motibo sa isang lalaki, tapos bumigay yung lalaki, hinawakan na po yung private parts ng babae, tapos parang natauhan po yung lalaki, tsaka lang po lumayo yung lalaki, ay makonsider siya na attempted rape?
Depende sa babae. Nag-consent ba yung babae? Kasi baka consensual siya. kasi tama ang pagkakaintindi ko. Yung babae ay nagpakita ng motibo.
Yes po.
So meron tayong flirtation na tinatawag. Tama ba? Ganon siguro yung gusto niyang tanungin. Nag-flirt sa kanya yung babae. Tapos hinawakan niya yung private part ng babae. Kasi na ano siya, na seduce. So ngayon, kung ang babae ay hindi nag-consent, ibig sabihin, kahit nag-flirt siya, pero hindi naman in her mind, hindi talaga yun yung intention niya na mahawakan siya. It could be worst na yon, ha. Worst is attempted rape. Pero it could also fall under sexual harassment. Okay? Sa acts of lasciviousness. So worst na yung masyadong mataas na yung level ng attempted rape. Okay? Kasi may touching. Although ang attempted rape it includes the touching of the genitals, private part ng lalaki sa private part ng babae. Touching lang. Ibig sabihin, hindi pumasok. Kasi pag pumasok, so that's rape. Consummated rape na yon. Okay? So, siguro, just for the information of everyone, so wala tayong frustrated rape. Okay? So, dalawa lang siya. It's either attempted or consummated. So, wala po yung sasabihin, ay, hindi natuloy. Walang ganon. Okay? So, it's either nag-attempt ka or na-consummate. Okay? So, walang frustrated rape sa batas natin. Okay. So, yun nga, worst na yung attempted rape sa ganong case if unconsented, ha? If unconsented. Pero pwede rin siya mag-fall under sexual harassment. Okay? So hope the question was answered.
Thank you po. Another question po from Joyce Ann Garcia. Hello ma'am, my question is what are or should there be evidences I must gather to have a solid support to the case if ever the opposition said it is just a false accusation? For example, I've been catcalled.
Sa Safe Spaces Act, hindi necessary na marami kang ebidensya. Catcalling, siguro kung may nakarinig na iba, it's enough. Or kaya kahit ikaw din mismo. Okay. Kasi kung talagang kasi usually ang catcalling may mga witnesses naman yan, public yan eh, tama? So it happens in the public. So kahit one or two witnesses, it's enough. Hindi naman kailangan mag-gather ng sobrang daming testimonies just to have a solid complaint, okay? Involving catcalling. Ayan. So that's it.
Okay po. Thank you po. I guess that's our last question. To our YouTube viewers, if you still have questions, pwede pa po magtanong sa atin pong participants dito sa ating Zoom.
Ako, Martina, I have a question.
Okay po, Ma'am Brenda. Okay po, go ahead.
Ask attorney. Attorney, kasi may kilala kasi ako na iniwan niya ang husband niya kasi ang husband niya ay palaging naglalasing. Is that a ground for separation, legal separation, no?
Yes po. It's one of the grounds. Provided na yung drinking, naging habitual na siya. I mean, hindi necessary na excessive lang. Baka naman isang beses lang naman. Kasi kung isang beses lang, hindi pa yon. Pero kailangan habitual. Ibig sabihin, paulit-ulit na lang na ginagawa. Ayan. Tas it causes damage na dun sa wife. Ayan. So it can be a ground for legal separation. Legal separation lang naman.
Oo. Mm.
Yes, ma'am.
So, she cannot marry.
Yes.
The wife cannot.
Kasi hindi siya ground for nullity or annulment ng marriage.
Okay, attorney. Thank you.
Opo.
Meron pa po bang questions? Wala pa daw pong question sa YouTube ulit.
Yung mga students, walang question? Lalo sa Safe Spaces Act. Yan. Kasi since a student can be an offender in Safe Spaces Act, it could cause his or her degree. Okay? So medyo din ang punishment. Okay? Although we don't have the guidelines yet, pero punishable yung kumbaga one of the liable persons for RA 11313 Safe Spaces Act sa education is the student. So kaya be careful yung mga estudyante. Kahit minor kayo kahit minor, since minor nga, pwede pa rin kayong ma-filean ng case. Although administrative, kasi you're still, kung nagawa siya within the school, so nasa jurisdiction pa kayo ng institution. Ayan. Kung outside, then it's your LGU who will be in charge of that. Ayan. So wala na siyang, the Safe Spaces Act covers everyone. Okay? So yung sexual harassment, hawak-hawak, ganyan, catcalling, pagsisipol, yan. Pagsisipol na may kasi baka sumisipol ka lang kasi gusto mong magpahangin. Ayan. Pero kung sumisipol ka dahil may babae na or may tao na dumaan and medyo na-attract ka, ayan, or ganon, seduce ka, nag-whistle, nag-blow ka ng whistle, ayan. So that is already punishable. Ayan. Oh, I forgot. Sa online pala sa online, I've already discussed this sa Safe Spaces Act, pero wala yatang estudyante nun. You have to be careful with your statements. Okay, kasi simpleng magsabi ka lang na it's in one of the cases. Ang ganda ng labi mo. Ang sarap halikan. Coming from a man to a woman. Yeah. So it can be a form of sexual harassment. Okay, online o kung online yan, halimbawa nagmi-meeting kayo, ayan, or nagkaklase kayo, tapos ikaw nagandahan ka dun sa lips ng kung sino man dun sa ka-meeting mo. Ayan, sinabi mo na, ay, ang ganda ng ang sarap halikan. So it's actually the sexual undertone of the statement. Okay? Which makes it fall under the Safe Spaces Act, sexual harassment. Ayan. Wala na? Any more questions po?
Ma'am, ako po attorney, I have question po.
Okay, si Martina ba ito?
Opo.
Okay.
What if po nangyari po yung harassment outside the campus? Can we still seek help po sa campus? Yes po.
Actually, it should be the local government kapag nasa labas na ng campus. Pero the administration could still assist you. Hindi ka pwedeng ang tawag dyan, hindi ka pwedeng i-deny. If you're going to report the incident, you can report it in school. Kasi under ka pa rin ng school kasi estudyante ka. Pero yung commission kasi ng act, yung territorial jurisdiction, it would be covered by the local government na kapag nasa labas na ng school. Unless it's outside of the school, pero yung activity is school tawag dyan, approved. Kumbaga yung nag-send sa'yo doon is yung school. So school pa rin ang may jurisdiction. Pero kung outside the school na, I mean, hindi na related sa pagpasok mo, hindi na related sa pag-aaral mo, it should be the local government that is in charge. Okay? As a student, as a student. Pero, as I've said, pwede kang mag-report sa school. And the school cannot deny you access dun sa procedure. So kung kunwari nag-report ka sa school, kailangan yung school, sila ngayon ang magko-coordinate with the local government. Tutulungan ka. Hindi ka pwedeng i-deny. Ayun. So, did I answer your question, Martina?
Yes po. Thank you po.
Lalo yung may mga questions kasi yung mga estudyante na sumasakay ng mga PUVs. 'Di ba? So, paano kung doon na commit? So it should be the local government doon sa area. Pero kung hindi ka naman hindi ka what do you call it, comfortable na dumiretso doon, gusto mo sa school mag-report, you can do that. And they will assist you. Okay? So kailangan may gagawin silang assistance for you. Okay?
Okay po. So, from another sender po, but what if the harassment is between two students from the same university?
Yes. So the school will have jurisdiction over that. And yun, it can be the victim can file a report with the CODI or dun sa officer in charge nila for the sexual harassment cases. Ayan. And tawag dyan, ang question siguro dyan is what if it happened between two students and the victim or both of them were already out of school, yung graduate na. Can you still file a case? Pwede pa rin, pero sabi ko nga kanina, criminal na lang siya, hindi na siya administrative kasi wala nang jurisdiction ang school. However, kung pareho silang nasa school pa, may jurisdiction ng school, then pwedeng mag-file ng complaint ang victim against the student offender. And that is possible for the Safe Spaces Act. So, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina, na hindi na lang siya basta-basta may moral ascendancy. Ang sexual harassment ngayon is not necessarily the offender has moral ascendancy. Anyone, okay, who commits yung mga acts, okay, enumerated sa Safe Spaces Act, kahit wala kang moral ascendancy, okay, you can still be punished or you can still be penalized under the Safe Spaces Act. Sexual harassment to ha, focused siya sa sexual harassment. Ayan. So kaya wala nang ang mga students ngayon. Na-cover kayo dun sa Safe Spaces Act.
Kahit minor, attorney? Kahit minor sila?
Yes po. Yes. Pwede pa rin. Kasi ang school po naman ay hindi naman magfa-file ng, hindi naman po kayo magsa-sanction ng imprisonment. Kasi ang sanction lang kasi ng school is administrative sanctions like suspension Okay, expulsion kung talagang yung sexual harassment is worst na yung kanyang level. So pwedeng expulsion. The Safe Spaces Act even provided the stripping of diploma. Meron pang stripping of diploma. So although hindi pa kasi right now we are developing the guidelines and we are in debate or argument as to anong ibig sabihin ng stripping of diploma kasi yun yung nakalagay sa batas. Okay? Pero yung expulsion or suspension, discretion ng school yun. Kung anong sanction yung ibibigay nila dun sa offender. Pero yung minor na victim, student victim, she or he can file a criminal case against the minor student. So, hiwalay. Pwede pa rin siyang mag-file ng criminal case. Pero outside na yun ng school. So
another question po.
Go ahead, Martina.
Pwede po ba mag-file ng complaint ang student kung nagkaroon ng emotional abuse ang prof that lead to not being his or her being able to qualify as honor student dahil pinersonal siya ng prof by giving INC grades sa subject niya?
Emotional abuse. So yan yung natin, yan yung what do you call that? Pero wala naman siyang there's no sexual offers ganyan sa kanya na bibigyan kita ng grade na ganito, ganyan. Provided may gawin kang ganito sa akin. Kung wala kasing ganong sexual undertone yung act, hindi siya magfo-fall under the Safe Spaces Act. Yan. As to the emotional abuse, hindi rin siya magfo-fall under RA 9262. Kasi yun naman ang nagpa-punish ng emotional abuse. Remember? Kaso, student siya, hindi siya kasama doon sa list ng mga offended parties ng RA 9262. So yun yung sinasabi ko kanina na may gap yung mga laws na akala natin nandun na lahat. Like RA 9262, kinover niya na yung psychological, emotional, economic, physical abuse. Pero nilimit niya yung offended party. Nilimit niya yung offended party as to wife, former wife, and their children, dating partners in a dating or sexual relationship. So yun yung mga offended parties niya. Ngayon, ang RA 11313 naman, Safe Spaces Act, kinover niya lahat, 'di ba? Anyone who experience sexual harassment can file a complaint against the offender. Pero nilimit naman niya yung offense as to sexual harassment. Nawala yung physical, emotional, psychological, economic abuse na meron sa RA 9262. Yun. So kaya kulang yung natin. So ngayon, yung mga abuses na ganyan, I think pwede siyang mag-fall. Hindi siya magfo-fall sa RA 11313, pero pwede siyang mag-fall under the ethical standards ng professor na nag-govern sa professor. So, kunwari sa PNU, so since government public school kayo, so meron tayong ethical standards or ethical conduct for public officers, 'di ba? Or public employees. So yun yung go-govern sa kanya, Martina. So hindi yung RA 9262, hindi yung RA 11313. Pwede siyang mag-file ng complaint using yung ethical standards na law. Ayan, for public employees. Meron yan. Even CSC, actually, ang CSC may guidelines na sila for sexual harassment. Yun nga lang, sexual harassment lang kasi. Pero kapag ganyan, so ethical standards and ethical conduct and standards for public employees yung mag-govern. Or baka yung school meron sa manual. 'Di ba? Sa manual ng administrative manual, faculty manual, meron kayong prohibition against those kinds of abuses or acts. Ayan. Pero just in case wala, so CSC ang mag-govern sa kanya.
Okay po.
Okay.
Another question po. Paano po kapag separated na ang parents mo at may kanya-kanya ng pamilya, may right ba ang anak na idemanda ang kanyang parents?
For may right na idemanda yung anak, anong violation? Ayun ba yung tinatanong niya kung magva-violate yung parents niya kasi naghiwalay na, tapos may family na, bawat isa.
Opo, parang ganun.
Wala naman siyang wala siyang violation, wala silang violation na na-commit unless nagkaroon ng what do you call that, emotional abuse yung isa sa yung husband dun sa kanyang yung tatay niya sa kanyang nanay. Let's say during the time na bago maghiwalay, 'di ba? So bakit naghiwalay? Kasi may third party si father. Ayan. Tapos dahil may mistress si father, si mother naman ay nagkaroon ng emotional stress, 'di ba? May anguish, may psychological stress na feel. That will fall under RA 9262. Pero kung nag-consent na sila pareho that they would be separated and the father would have his own family and yung mother magkakaroon na rin ng kanyang family. Wala nang violation na committed. So may violation lang if yun nga yung father nagkaroon ng mistress, nagkaroon ng family, tapos si mother na-stress siya, nagkaroon siya ng mental anguish, ganyan, or psychological or emotional distress. So pwede siyang mag-file sa RA 9262 using RA 9262. Otherwise, kung ang situation is nag-consent na yung both parties that they will be separated, sa palagay ko hindi yan, if they are legally separated, tas may partners, may family, okay lang yun, provided that they will not marry. Kasi sabi nga ni Miss Brenda kanina, pag legal separation, hindi ka pwedeng mag-asawa. So partner lang yon, hindi sila, kung legal separation lang, so yung father, hindi siya pwedeng magpakasal dun sa kanyang partner, yung mother, hindi din siya pwedeng magpakasal dun sa partner niya. Ayan.
Okay po. Meron pa pong isa pong question.
Sige po.
Ask ko lang po kung pwede po bang makasuhan ang taong may emotional and behavioral disorder kung nangharas po siya ng mga babae at pwedeng humantong sa rape.
If that is the case, ang titingnan lagi is yung lucid interval na tinatawag. Was the offense committed during the lucid interval of that person na may psychological, let's say, hindi stable, unstable psychological condition, 'di ba? Yung kapag ganyan, actually ang tawag nila is insane, insanity yan. Magfo-fall under insanity siya. And if that is the case, you have to look whether the offense was committed during the lucid interval. When you say lucid interval, ito yung, 'di ba minsan, yung tao, kahit wala sa sarili, meron siyang time na may reason siya. Yun yung tinatawag na lucid interval. Kapag na-commit siya dun sa lucid interval, then pwede siyang ma-prosecute. Pero kapag committed siya, pag insanity kasi, pwede ka naman mag-file ng complaint. Pero as to the sanction, usually kapag ganyan, ilalagay lang siya into a mental institution. Ayun. So hindi siya, pero pwedeng mag-file. Siyempre, if somebody in that condition did something to you, then you have to file a complaint. Actually in the filing of the complaint, everybody is, what do you call that? Everybody can do that. Diba? As to the appreciation of your complaint, so dun na siya. So kunwari, nag-file ka ng complaint against that person with that condition, and what you want is for him to be imprisoned. So medyo malabo yung ganong goal mo. Kasi if that is the condition, kailangan ilalagay siya sa mental institution until such time na gumaling na siya, then he will now be, ang tawag dyan, imprisoned, or he or she will serve yung kanyang penalty. Ayan. That is if he or she is found guilty. Ayan. Kasi baka hindi naman siya guilty. Ayan. Pero pwede yan, Martina. You can file a complaint. Kasi para sa akin, reporting is the best way to deter talaga. Kasi kung hindi ka magre-report, wala ring action on the other end. So kaya, you have to report. Do not think that it will not prosper. Okay? Sabihin mo na, ay, hindi na ako magre-report kasi hindi naman magpo-prosper yung case ko. Oh. So wala nang nagre-report. Hindi mo pa naman sure kung talagang hindi siya magpo-prosper. So kailangan, pag may ganyang case, always be on the side of optimism na i-report ko to at para magkaroon ng deterrence, 'di ba? Para ma-avoid na to. Sabi ko nga kanina, maging proactive tayo. So hindi lang necessary na nangyari na saka ka lang a-act. Okay? Kailangan even prior to that, bago pa mangyari, kung kaya mo i-deter, then do something to deter it. Ayan. So,
Okay
I hope,
po.
ayan. Okay.
Another question po.
Okay.
What if may nag-file ng case laban sa isang lalaki about catcalling kahit hindi niya naman ginawa? Pero may mga kasabwat na witness na nagsasabi na nag-catcall nga yung lalaki kahit hindi naman. How can the guy defend himself kung pinagtutulungan siya ng mga witness?
I think it would be on the part of the judge. So kung sino man yung authority na magja-judge, you should convince him or her that you did not do it. Ayan. So, prone siya sa abuse. Yung RA 11313. Kasi wala siyang protection dun sa, yun nga, what if they've just made such situation, hindi naman talaga nangyari, pero dahil ayaw kanila or gusto kanilang i-bully, ganyan. So, ginawa nila yon. So, right now, there is no way, and the only way is actually to convince the judge. Whoever is the judge, hindi naman court judge necessary. Court judge, pwedeng ang barangay captain, whoever will be judging the situation. Ayan. So, wala siyang protection. Walang protection ang batas dun sa ganong situation. Ayan. So, I think you really have to be careful. Kasi kapag ganon, it's up to the judge. Kasi nasa appreciation naman siguro ng judge kung mako-convince naman siya na wala talagang catcalling na nangyari. Ayan. Pero as to what he can do, convince the judge. Yun yung sagot ko. Kasi walang protection yung batas. Wala siyang mechanism for that. Ayan.
Okay po. Ito naman po. Yung case kasi dito sa amin na batang ni-rape at pinatay 2 weeks ago, sumuko na raw kasi yung tunay na pumatay, which is yung anak noong main suspect. Makukulong pa rin ba yung ama kasi minolest rin niya yung bata noong nabubuhay pa? Di ko lang sure kung anong pangmamolest siya ang ginawa.
Depende sa information na ifa-file ng prosecutor. So kung naka-file na-file ni prosecutor yung incident ng molestation before, then the father will remain imprisoned unless he will be subject to bail kasi hindi naman rape yung molestation, so it is not pwede siya sa acts of lasciviousness lang. So depende kung may bail na i-grant sa kanya, then at makapagbayad siya ng bail, then makakalabas na siya. And depende, it will depend on the prosecutor's filing of information. Kung nasa information pa rin siya, impleaded pa rin, then he will remain in custody so as long as walang bail. If he will be granted bail and he will be able to pay it, then he will be freed. Ayan. So hindi necessary na meron ng isang may nahuli na or nagsabi na siya ay what do you call that? Siya yung gumawa nun ay exonerated na agad yung previous suspect. Okay, so depende pa rin sa prosecutor. Ayan.
Okay po. So last question po. Do wrongly imprisoned get compensation?
They could avail of damages. They could file for payment of damages. Okay, pero as to compensation given by the government, automatic compensation, there's none. Ayan. What they can do is to file for damages, siguro damages to the yung offended party na nag-ano sa kanya, or it depends on whoever was guilty or at fault in his imprisonment. Pero walang automatic compensation for the wrongly imprisoned persons.
Okay po. Mayroon po tayong follow-up question about dun sa insane person. Paano kung yung harassment ay humantong sa pagpatay? Paano po ang sanction nun?
If it is murder, hindi pala, murder na siya. or homicide. So mental institution, and after being cured of the insanity, you will serve your penalty. So ganun siya. Hindi ka kasi pwedeng ilagay diretso sa, or you cannot serve your sentence unless you are cured of your insanity. So, ganun pa rin. If you are found guilty, you will still serve your sentence. So, hindi ka exonerated. Baka ang nasa isip niya is, ay kasi insane ako, so sa mental institution lang ako forever. Ganun. So, pwede, forever ka doon if you will not be cured. Sa palagay ko, ang the restrictions sa mental institution and the restrictions sa prison would be the same. Kumbaga, yung condition mo doon, pareho lang naman. So, hindi ka pa rin pwedeng lumabas. Kahit nasa health facility ka, mental health facility ka, you are still considered as imprisoned. Hindi ka pwedeng lumabas ng mental facility. So, ilalabas ka lang nila kung ikaw ay magaling na, at kung magaling ka na, ililipat ka na ngayon sa prison cell. Ayun. Okay.
Okay po. Thank you so much, Attorney.
Any more questions? Wala naman.
Wala na pong question. So thank you very much po for answering our questions.
You're
And we're
welcome.
going now to head on to the awarding of our certificate.
Sir Josh. Wait. Sir Joshua. Naka-flash na ba? Wait lang po. Wait. Ako na lang po. Yan. Martina.
Okay, let me read to you the content of the certificate. Philippine Normal University, South Luzon, the National Center for Teacher Education, Technology, and Livelihood Education Hub, awards this certificate of recognition to Attorney Frances May de la Cruz-Segui for sharing her expertise as resource person in the 18-day campaign to end violence against women with the theme VAW Free Community Starts with Me, hosted by PNU South Luzon Gender and Development Office. Issued this 27th day of November 2020 live via Zoom application. Signatories Brenda B. Villamore, Head Gender and Development, Rodrigo Abenes, Dean for Academics and TLE, and Roel V. Avila, Executive Director and Provost. Again, the certificate of recognition is awarded to Attorney Frances May de la Cruz Segui. Thank you very much, Attorney.
Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully you learned something from my talk, especially the students. Thank you. And to the organizers, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney.
Yes, we are very grateful to have you as our resource speaker for today. And now, this time, we're going to have the launching of our events for our 18-day campaign against violence against women and children. Let us have Rose Jane Hernandez, the Vice President of Lady Educators Club.
Thank you, Martina. Good morning po.
Morning.
To the President of PNU, Dr. Bert J. Tuga, Vice President for Academics, Dr. Jenny V. Hoxon, to the Head of Gender and Development, Manila, Dr. Minda Valencia, our Executive Director and Provost, Dr. Ruel V. Avila, our Dean for Academics, Dr. Rodrigo D. Abenes, the OIC of us, Professor Amor F. Lunisa, our Goddess, Professor Brenda B. Villamor, our guest speaker, Attorney Francis May Sigui, members of the faculty, staff, and my co-PNUans, once again, good morning. Yearly, PNUSL joins the 18-day campaign to end VAW. Along with this are smart activities prepared for students. And for this year, the Office of Gender and Development, together with Lady Educators Club, prepare a series of activities starting today, November 27 to December 12, 2020, specially designed for our current situation. So here's the list of activities. Starting from this opening program, where we'll learn about gender-based violence in time of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have Color Your Icon Challenge. In this activity, we are encouraging everyone to post a picture or pictures of you or your friends wearing orange shirts. You can also use the following hashtags: hashtag VAW Free Community Starts with me, hashtag VAW Free PH, and hashtag Orange the World. Then, photo exhibit. Of course, the photo must be relevant to the theme, VAW Free Community Starts with me. Any photo po, basta po kayo ang kumuha, and must be submitted with the corresponding title or caption. Another activity po ay one assist. Dito naman po, participants will deliver a short message or speech. It can be in Filipino or English and should not contain any vulgar or inappropriate words. Then we also have spoken word poetry. Express your support through spoken word. Yes, it can be in Filipino or English and must be original. And last, dalikhawit. In spoken word poetry, you express your support through word. In this activity, you express through music. Again, it must be an original and can be in solo, duet, or group. The guidelines for these activities were posted in our Facebook page, Lady Educators Club. So if you haven't seen the announcement yet, you can visit the page and click like and also share the post. Okay, hindi ko na po pahahabain. Now, I am glad to announce that this year's PNUSL's participation in 18-day campaign to end VAW formally begins. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose Jane Hernandez. At yan po ang ating mga activities for our 18-day campaign to end violence against women and children. And this time, I would like to call on
Wala yata si Martina.
I would like to call on Miss Alana B. Serafon to perform a spoken word poetry.
Cecilia, ang batang ina. Nagising ako 2:30 ng madaling araw. Naalimpungatan ako sa kanyang malakas na palahaw. Siguradong nagugutom na naman siya, kaya siya naguhumiyaw. Bumangon ako upang kunin siya sa kanyang kinalalagyan, sa nakataling kumot na nagsisilbing kanyang duyan. Binuhat ko siya at binigyan ng gatas upang siya ay tumahan. Bilang suporta sa aking payat na braso at pangangatawan, ako'y umupo at ipinatong siya sa aking kandungan. Sa oras na lumipas at nagdaan, ako'y napaluha ng hindi namamalayan. Nakita ko kasi ang aking litrato na nakasabit sa dingding na gawa sa yero malapit sa may pintuan. Nakasuot ako ng toga, 2 taon na ang nakakaraan. Paano nga ba ako umabot sa ganitong kalagayan? Basta, 10 oras na ng gabi, pabalik sa aming tahanan. Katatapos lang ng proyekto namin sa paaralan. Nakasuot pa nga ako ng uniforme. Dala ang aming ulam panghapunan. Wala ako nung kaalam-alam na may sumusunod na pala sa akin na hindi ko man lang naramdaman. Nabigla na lang ako nang may tumakip sa bibig ko at ako'y sinikmuraan. Nanghina ang tuhod ko, kaya wala akong lakas na makalaban sa estranghero na kukuha ng puri at dangal na aking pinakaiingatan. Hinila niya ako sa masukal at madilim na kakahuyan, ni hindi ako makawala sa kanyang mahigpit na hawak sa aking leeg at pulsuhan. Hindi na nga ako makalaban. Pinuno pa ako ng pasa, tadyak, at paulit-ulit na pinagsamantalahan. Mag-uumaga na nang ako'y makauwi sa aming tahanan. Wala na dito ang aking tiya. Siguradong nagtitinda na siya sa pamilihan. Hirap man, ngunit pinilit kong makarating sa palikuran upang maglinis ng sugat. Sugat na hindi na maghihilom kailanman. Hinintay ko ang aking tiya na makabalik. Magpapasama ako sa kanya upang magsumbong sa himpilan. Pero bago ko pa yun magawa, dumating siyang galit na galit. Agad niya akong hinila at sinabunutan. May kumalat pala na usap-usapan na kaya hindi raw ako nakabalik. Ako raw ay nakipagtanan. Hindi ko alam kung saan galing ang bulong-bulungan. Ngunit ang hirap lang paniwalaan. Hindi pa ba sapat na dahilan itong pasa at sugat ko sa katawan? Tumigil ako sa pag-aaral dahil na-discover ko lumalaki ang aking tiyan. 4 na buwan na pala akong may dinadala sa aking sinapupunan. Hindi ko alam kung ano ang aking mararamdaman. Gusto kong sumigaw, gusto kong magwala, gusto ko nang sumuko. Nandidiri ako sa sarili ko. Hindi ko alam kung bakit kailangan magkaganito. Ayoko sa batang ito. Yan ang unang pumasok sa isipan ko. Pero ayokong abandonahin ang batang ito, gaya ng naranasan ko. Hindi ko man makamit ang hustisya ko. Hindi ko man makilala kung sinong gumawa nito. Hindi man maganda ang naranasan ko. Sisiguraduhin kong magiging maganda ang buhay ng batang ito. Hindi man ako perpekto, pero lalaban ako. Hindi man para sa sarili ko, kung hindi para sa buhay ng dinadala ko. Napatingin ako sa batang nasa kandungan ko. Ubos na pala yung gatas sa bote na inihanda ko. Napansin ko ang nakasabit na kalendaryo. Magdadalawang buwan na pala siya sa susunod na linggo. At mag-iisang taon naman ang trahedyang nangyari sa buhay ko. Ipinapangako ko sa sarili ko. Hindi ko man maibalik ang nakaraan. Ngunit sisiguraduhin kong babangon ako para sa kinabukasan. Bago matapos ang aking istorya, nais ko munang magpakilala. Ako nga pala si Cecilia. 14 anyos na. Isa akong batang ina.
Okay, thank you so much. And that entry and piece belongs to Miss Alona Serafon and to Miss Camille Basa of 2BTLE HEB. So I guess that ends our opening program for our 18-day campaign to end violence against women. Always remember that a VAW Free community starts with us. Let us work together to make every community a VAW Free community. This is Martina Gaza. Thank you so much. God bless everyone. Keep safe. And a VAW Free community starts with me.
Martina, photo